You guys have wanted to talk about this.
Some of you, anyway.
Some of you. So we're going to talk about this. And no, they are not tanking, even though we have the great graphic
Tank talk,
there
baby.
with the tank talk text. They're not tanking, but we still have to talk about it just because. ... Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Wednesday, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. And the 76ers, as good as they have been, they can never make it just an ordinary season, healthy, get through it. And let's get to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe the NBA Finals. Can't do it. It's never ordinary. Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, Devon Givens, Brianna, all of you.
Our good news so far this year is that our MVP caliber player's broken face isn't as bad as the previous two times he broke his face. That's good news for the Sixers this year.
Derek, by the way, I'm just so happy to see you show up in a Draft Express shirt.
It was topical today.
Very on brand for the show today. You got to really lean into the fact that you're the draft guy amongst us. I'm excited. I wouldn't say excited because I didn't want to be talking about the lottery necessarily in mid-December.
We didn't think we would be talking about the lottery at all until they actually do it in May when they put together the list. So,
well, and even then, we didn't expect to be talking about it from a Sixers perspective.
Standpoint. So we'll talk about some practice notes from today. The guys were at practice a little bit earlier today, give you an update on Joel Embiid and also Jared McCain. Jared McCain, I don't care how much surgery he's had, he knows how to find TikTok. Even when he's under, the influence
that video, man.
But it makes for a good TikTok. We'll talk about a few other things like the NBA Cup final last night, what this means for the Bucks and or the Thunder, the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, and maybe a little something that we sneak in a little bit later that Kyle and Derek never know about because they just don't.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Yes.
Is Die Hard 2 a Christmas movie?
Yes. In the summertime with Samuel L. Jackson. Let's do it.
Yesterday's surprise caused some after-show brawling. So, I'm really curious what you have going on here. That was one of the most heated shows we've had in quite a while.
That's just what family does, right? It's the holidays, your family fights, and you flip over the table, and the food is all messed up, but you get back after it the next day. I love Kyle, and he knows it. All right, let's get to it. Let's have a little conversation and discuss some of these prospects. And why are we discussing the prospects? Because, look, a lot of you have already asked, would you do this for this particular player? What do you think of Cooper Flagg? What do you think of Ace Bailey? And so many other names that we already know in college basketball. The one that bothers me the most, as Derek is on brand with his Draft Express one, is that we would know the top 20 in and out of what type of player they are and who they are. And we can get into a whole nother conversation another day. Maybe we might have to, because of how the college basketball landscape has changed and where things are. Like your favorite team being like a Michigan or a UNLV, myself the same included, and Derek.
I will say I was a UNC guy back in the day, that was the Vince Carters, the Sheeds, and Ed Cota was my guy.
And you knew all of those players. Oh yeah. And man, we're gonna see these guys in the league for a very long time. It's a little different now, but in this case, sitting at 8 wins, 24 games in the season, not a place that Kyle just pointed out that we expected to be, Derek. But here we are as we start things off with this conversation. And before we get to the number one prospect that we want to start off with, just the fact that we're here, what are your thoughts on, as a scouting guy who, former scouting guy, but you did it. You did it. What do you think of how things are now in the college basketball landscape?
Well, I actually think this is a really interesting draft, right? Because in last year, I don't think you would have a number one pick, but I don't think anyone really graded them as a number one pick, and that detracts from the draft a little bit. Then you go back to Wemby's draft, and there was no real uncertainty there. Everybody knew Wemby was a top prospect. This is one where I could see certainly 2 players being in that conversation towards the end of the year, but it could go 3, 4, 5 deep. And I think there's some really good depth at the top of the draft and some really differences in how those players go about playing the game. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're the team with number one pick and you need a point guard or a lead initiator, that might change how you approach it. I think the prospects from what they've shown so far are close enough where it could come down to that a little bit. But it's just, I think this is going to be a real fun draft to talk about. Hopefully, by the time we get to May, the Sixers have figured everything out and they're getting ready for a second-round playoff series, and we don't have to worry about that. But for the teams that are talking about it, or if the Sixers, everything continues to go wrong, I think this is a really interesting draft. I do.
And quickly, as Kyle has already had to respond to Louis in the chat, we said it at the very top, and we know more people are going to jump in and miss the open of why we're discussing draft talk. Again, it's just more of looking at the prospects. We'll probably check in on them again at some point when the conference games start to really pick up and we see some more conference games there where against better opponents and all. So it's just you guys want to talk about it. We're a show that likes to also incorporate what you want to talk about. The Sixers are, quite frankly, right there in that spot at the moment, and they have a top 6 protected pick in the 2025 NBA draft. That's why we're talking about it. Not that the Sixers are giving up. We said it at the beginning.
Yes.
They're not tanking. They're not doing that. They're most likely going to make the play-in tournament. They're not tanking. We're not talking about them tanking. We're just talking about the top prospects.
Look, we do 5 shows a week, and for reasons for the NBA Cup, they've decided to basically not play games in the middle of December. We have to do some shows, but also they do have a top 6 protected pick. None of us here expect the Sixers will try to make really efforts to keep that pick, but if things continue to go wrong, let's say they end up with the 10th worst record in the league, you're not going to have a great chance of keeping the pick. In fact, the 10th worst record would give you about a 13% chance of keeping the pick. 8th worst would give you about a 25%. It's never going to be a great chance of keeping the pick, but things could happen. And it's just worthwhile every now and then because there's a chance. It might be a small chance.
Check in.
And again, it's not.
All right, enough of the preamble. Let's talk about these damn prospects.
It's just worth checking in every now and then throughout the course of the season. The show's labeled as it is. You can make the decision.
Oh my God, 7 minutes of explaining. Let's talk. Let's talk basketball.
Set up the show, baby. Set it up. That's right. Set it up. All right, Bree, let's drop number 1 in there. The first prospect to discuss at 16 points per game, just under 17, 11 games in for Duke. 9 boards, 3.6 assists. He's shooting 24%. As guys, I know you love the 3-point.
That went up. That went up. It was like 22, 21, 22%.
I know how much you guys love the 3-point shot and taking the volume and making, of course. All right, Derek, 24% for him, but we know who he is as a player. It's just more of seeing how he develops and continues to develop. Watching him from high school to some of the Olympic stuff that you see, practicing with the Olympic team this year as part of the select team. And he's living up to that expectation right now for the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, and look, and you threw it at us as how much we care about the shot, and we do. Like on the court, building around Joel, but really just building in the NBA in general, the shot is really important. As a 17-year-old, I'm not as worried about that number as you could be, in part because I do think like right now he's showing some decent stuff from the mid-range, the free throw shootings, fairly good. And as a 17-year-old, there's just a lot of reps that are going to go in between where he is now and where he will be as an NBA, once he starts getting into his prime. I think it's reasonable that he will improve on that pretty substantially. That doesn't mean like a 40% 3-point shooter or anything like that. But I think there's a reasonable chance he will be a good enough 3-point shooter to be able to show more creation than he currently is. And I think when you look at everything else he brings to the table, which is almost quite literally everything else from the defensive versatility to the playmaking, I think he's pretty heady in the way he plays. I think that shows up both in the defensive playmaking and also in offense. I think he's a decent passer. I think he shows some creativity. I think he has some connectiveness into his game. And I think when you're 17, and again, that age when you're scouting a prospect is really important because these guys have really only been playing high-level basketball for like 1 or 2 years. And when you're constantly playing against people older than you, that really shows up at this stage of their life. And part of that is on just the read and react, the anticipation of how defenses are going to react to you. For what he's able to do at that young age, I think is pretty incredible. I think he is pretty clearly still the top prospect in the draft. That doesn't mean like if Dylan Harper goes and shoots lights out from here on out and Cooper continues to struggle, could someone have a difference of opinion come June? Yes, but I do think if you ask most people around the league, he would still be the top prospect, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah, so you brought up the intangible stuff, the game intelligence, I think feel is where I really want to focus because on defense, a lot of times with young guys, you either have to choose between this guy can switch and guard people one-on-one, or this guy can be a disruptor off the ball, whether that's as a weak side rim protector, as a guy who gets into passing lanes. And he can do basically everything defensively. He can do everything in the half court. He can do everything in transition, where even early in the season, he's only played, like 9, 10, 11 games so far. But you've seen him make chase down blocks, plays really hard, very attentive. And he's at at close to 1.5 steals and 1.5 blocks a game, right? And generally, that's an indicator not just of someone's defensive tools, but their athletic tools in college, right? Just your ability to leverage what you have in terms of foot speed, wingspan, all that. Those are really positive signs for him. So I'm going to throw out a couple names. Devon wanted to do some cross-racial comparisons.
Let's do some cross-racial comparisons because we always go
it's white guy.
Right. Black guy. Who does he play like?
So on the offensive end, and I brought this up to the guys yesterday as we were doing a little bit of prep for this show, I can see a little bit of Pascal Siakam where right now it's mid-post and spin moves and isolation and more stuff around the basket where you see a projectable shot, but the numbers aren't there, and maybe you want him limited on the perimeter to certain types of shots that he's good at. But I think I feel better about his shot moving forward than I would have for Siakam coming out of college, for example. It's more just the ability to play mismatch basketball, right? Like he's got enough size and athleticism that if you throw him the ball and ask him to isolate, and frankly, Duke has done that quite a bit. It's a lot of just mismatch hunting for him. I think that ends up serving him well in the long term. I think in the short term right now, it leads to some clunky possessions and he gets trapped in spots where he doesn't want to be. But by and large, I think he's done a pretty good job at his size and with his skills to get to his spots, hit some mid-range stuff, finish around the rim, get to the free throw line a decent amount. So I think that's really good. So Siakam on offense, and then we'll go back to another white guy for the defensive stuff. I think there's a little bit of you can see early Andre Kirilenko in him. And those two guys separately are not the sexiest names, right? Like Siakam as a number one guy is not who you want. As a number two, maybe three is a good fit there. Kirilenko was basically just a complimentary player, but a high level defensive guy. But if you get Siakam combined with Kirilenko in the NBA, that's a top 10 player in the league. So
yeah, Kirilenko would be amazing in today's NBA. He played an era where we didn't really know about defensive versatility, which sounds stupid, but we're you're a 1 and you're a 2 and you're a 3, and we don't really worry about switching. He would be a real problem. He was one of the real 5x5 threats of that era. And I think you brought up Siakam. I think one thing that a lot of the defensive playmaking numbers, besides showing your defense versatility and your athleticism and your defensive tools, it also shows how you process the game. You do not get steals if you don't have good anticipation. And that's one of the key indicators for prospects. It's one of the I think a lot of people had a lot of concerns with Wiggins back in the day because he did not have any steals playing at Kansas. But it is something that really shows off, like I said, your anticipation. I think you see that on both sides. And quite frankly, I think that's a pretty big differentiator between him and someone like Siakam, and why I see a lot more offensive potential for someone like Flagg if he figures out that shot. I think he is, quite frankly, if you had asked me a couple months ago how much ISO he's been trying to run, I would have thought he would have struggled more than he currently is. I think he is doing better in that role than I would have expected. Yeah, I have like I said, still pretty clearly a top prospect for me.
And to be clear, I mean Siakam as a compliment. Yeah. And I'm not saying Siakam is a limited player, but he's got stuff that as he was working to expand his range and become an NBA role player who eventually became a high level NBA player, he still had stuff that he could go to. And that's some of it. And it's also just the way that he kind of uses the shoulder to dip into people and spin around them and operate from that mid-post area. And then it's not meant to be he's Pascal Siakam exactly. I can just see some parallels between how they play and frankly, the growth path that he would have to go on to go from where he's at to where you want him to be as a featured player. And so to relate it back to the Sixers, I think the important thing, the reason that Flagg really stands out for me, that defensive stuff it's rare to say this about a 17-year-old. In fact, you basically never say it about a 17-year-old. That stuff gives him a chance to make a positive impact on a team immediately, right? And so if the Sixers find themselves in the situation where they do have one of these top picks, let's just say they win the lottery by some stroke of good fortune, right?
After everything
Flagg is somebody that his limitations are not as relevant for a team like the Sixers that has offensive firepower, his defensive versatility and his ability to change games and fit in from day one and make an impact, that would be a massive, massive boost for this team. Because think about playing him as a 4 next to Paul George and Joel Embiid, guy who's getting 9 rebounds a game in just 31 minutes at the college level. Someone who can, look, he's got to fill out physically and there'll be some issues there early on, but in theory, helps with the defense, helps with the rebounding, can be a situational offensive player, and you just ask him to slowly expand his game from there. That's the ideal scenario for a player like him.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking specifically as a fit on this Sixers team, a 25-year-old Cooper Flagg is far and away this most seamless fit and what they're missing the most.
Yeah.
But he is, of course, not going to be 25 years old, even if they are lucky enough to draft him. And that is something you will have to reconcile with.
And the one thing that you see is the fact that he has played against many of these pros already. Once again, being on the select team, which was the latest thing, the fact that in his last 2 summers, he's really practiced a lot with these NBA pros already and is giving them work already in these pickup games, being invited to these top workout guys, these trainers that they have, and having Cooper Flagg there, working out with them individually, working out with them together as well. He is a fantastic player. And then you look at the handle that he has for a guy that size, as they've broken everything down with him. When you bring up Pascal Siakam, he has certain things, of course, that he knows how to get to his spot. That between the legs, back to the basket so he can start to back down his defender. Then the step back at the mid post to get that jump shot off. Karolinko as a comparison. But the one thing that does translate that they didn't really have is the handle that he has. This kid has at 17 years old. When he gets to the league, that stuff is just going to improve because of how much they practice with these individuals and then the player development guys with whatever team he goes to and to work on that stuff. So when things happen, let's say it is stroke of good luck for the Sixers and it is George and Maxey and Embiid and the ball swings to him. You guys talked about it. To have someone like him as a 4th option potentially and can put the ball on the floor, can hit an open shot despite the fact that his numbers are so low from behind the 3-point line, the talent is already there. So that guy is fantastic. He is on a big spot, and it's only going to get better once they get to the tournament. Like we talked about Maxey not being able to showcase it. This guy's already number 1, but when he gets there and he continues to show out and he puts up some big games in the NCAA tournament in April, that guy is not going to have he's going to be pretty good. He's going to be pretty good in the league. So that's why we wanted to start off with him. We have a few more. We were discussing our top 5. Maybe we can sneak in another one, a 6th here on the show today. Taking a little break from the Sixers overall. They'll be back on the floor on Friday against the Charlotte Hornets. Talk a little draft prospects. You've asked about it. We're discussing it. Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, Devon Givens, Bree is here. We come back. We'll get into our next few prospects right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365.
All right, guys, we've got to tell you about Empire today because if you're like me, you need all the help in the world for some of those home improvement projects. And if flooring is on your to-do list, Empire Today is the place you want to turn to. With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today keeps shopping for floor simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not to overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. And Empire Today has a virtual floor designer, which is a great way to see how the new floors will look in any space. It's easy. You just snap a picture and instantly see how the new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might be talking to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday. They, quite frankly, just don't know what they're talking about. Flooring is all that Empire Today does, though. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest and upfront advice. They also service their own warranties, so with Empire Today, you won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use a promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHLY for details.
And we are 7 days away from the holiday, the big day on Wednesday, of course. And many people are still searching for gifts. What's an easy one to get? How about some jewelry? And Golden Nugget Jewelry has you covered for that, where Philly gets engaged. And while you're trying to figure out these last-minute gifts, you still have 7 days to get out there. And if you're in a pinch and you do want to get some jewelry because you know your loved one, maybe some of your kids, you want to get them something that you just simply want to go out there and get some jewelry, Golden Nugget Jewelers is the place for you. Located at 8th and Chestnut in downtown Philly, family-owned and operated business since 1987. And oftentimes during the holiday, people do like to pop the big question when you're surrounded by your friends and family. She doesn't know. Bang. It happens right there. Your partner never knew it was coming because you didn't drop any hints. But if you go to Golden Nugget Jeweler, they'll have you all ready to go. Receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring with purpose there. And not just wedding jewelry. You can find watches, diamond necklaces, diamond bracelets, earrings, and more. Derek, I got you a diamond necklace. I'm not telling you. I'll show it to you later so you can match me and Kyle. This is, we have our chains going on.
Hey, I got no diamond chains.
We just got the gold chains going on.
I want one of those.
They have that for you as well. You deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Head over to goldennuggetjewelers.com to learn more. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers
Need to
podcast.
work on my grill so I can do this.
Bet365, yes. The ones that do it the most are the football athletes-wise. It's the football players. Like Jamar Chase, he's got the whole thing. They're playing. I'm like, is that a mouthpiece? And
it's a mouthpiece, all right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yes, you got to work on that one. Absolutely. All right, Kyle, let's get to the next one because these guys will probably be in the mix playing for some jewelry at the end of the season in college basketball. And maybe one of them might be the Rutgers basketball team that has two prospects that we might be talking about.
Which one are we going to first is the question.
Let's start off with the guy who has risen up the boards a little bit. Let's go with Dylan Harper to start things off.
Good. We can start with the positive instead of
11 games
what's wrong with this guy?
23.5 points per game, 4 assists, 4.8 rebounds. He's shooting 36% from beyond the three-point line, and he has a great family lineage. Of course, his dad is Ron Harper of the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Chicago Bulls, later on the Los Angeles Lakers. Ron Harper was a fantastic. His brother also played at Rutgers, Ron Harper Jr., and this one, though, this guy is supremely talented. He's been a 5-star recruit for a long time.
Yeah.
Surprised a lot of people by going to Rutgers, but if you're talented, you're talented, which is why we're going to ride up and take a visit to see these guys play, and this guy's showing out.
So I want to make sure we emphasize scoring 23.5 points a game on good efficiency as a college freshman at a major conference is insane. Excuse me. Is insane. Like that simply does not happen. There are not many guys in all of college basketball who put up these types of numbers. I think it's even more insane when you think of the fact that, or not think of the fact, if you watch Rutgers, their offense is pretty trash, honestly. Like the style of play they have is you're putting a lot of pressure on someone like Harper to self-create, self-generate, a lot of ISO, can be disconnected to some degree. And there's another prospect there that we'll talk about his role in all of that. And Dylan Harper is scoring hyper efficiently, or not hyper efficiently, but efficiently anyway. Here's a big thing. 7.2 free throw attempts a night. He has been able to get to his spots and leverage the size advantage he has. So he's like a true 6'6", right? And he's not built quite yet, but I think you can see in the shoulders and in the arms, like he's going to get stronger. He's going to get bigger as he gets older. And when you put him within NBA spacing, I think he's going to be an even more dangerous driver, slasher, all of that. I think his feel is very good, especially when you compare it to the teammate that we're going to get to in a little bit. I just think his control of the game is great. And compared to Flagg, who I think for the Sixers specifically is better, and I think it was still rightfully the number one prospect right now. I actually feel better right now about Dylan Harper you put him on a blank slate team and ask him to be the guy. I feel better about his ability to do that right now than I do about Cooper Flagg. I just think the ability to get his own shot, create for others, and be like a true offensive engine is ahead of where Flagg is at. Now, defensively, he's not the same. And I do think athletically there are concerns where I keep bringing up, I see a little bit of like Cade Cunningham in him where he's a good, not great athlete. And so if his shooting numbers come down, that puts you in a much tougher position as a driver. It's harder to create separation. It's harder to be, step and a half in front of somebody and do the physical stuff, leaning into people with your shoulder, get to the free throw line. Like, how quickly does it fall apart if he starts shooting worse, right? And he's only shooting 36%, which when you consider the shot diet, a lot of tough contested threes, a lot of pull-up jumpers, that's still pretty good. But if that craters a little bit, you wonder somewhat what's going to happen there. But I think he's the type of guard that we talk about, wow, it's hard to find a perfect fit next to someone like Maxey or McCain, right? Who are not true point guards, but you need some size next to them. You get a 6'6" ball handler who can score and play make and get to the free throw line and play off the ball. Like that is a guy who can succeed almost anywhere. Like, I'm really, really bullish on him after his first, 10, 11 games that year.
Games in,
yeah. And you brought that up. Offensively, I think he would be an almost perfect fit next to either Maxey or McCain. Defensively, size-wise, again, 6'5", 6'10" wingspan, that's okay. The question is he going to be able to move his feet well enough to really be an impact defender? But with Maxey's growth defensively, I care a little less about that and a little more about just give me the size to compete. And I think he has that, and I think he will grow into his body a little more as he gets older. I don't worry about his fit too much. Like I said, I would love for him to be a little more of a projectable defender, but outside of that, I think he's a really good fit. And shooting and ball handling and decision-making are just skill sets that I don't worry about. There's no overlap in that. You just want as much of them as you can get. So I think that, I think what he has shown here over the first 11 games or so of the season, he has vaulted into that number 2 slot for me pretty comfortably. And again, I think we're early enough in the season where you shouldn't have any real clear, like, things can and should change if you're doing your job. And when you start looking at some of these percentages, like he's shooting 36% from 3, but it's on 55 attempts, 2 or 3 of them in another direction, it would be a very different number. Don't put too much stock into the numbers. Do a little more on how you think the shot looks and how it's projectable. And I do think, I'm relatively confident in that shot. If that shot ends up becoming a real legitimate plus weapon, then there is a lot to like about his game. I do think, to Kyle's point about the athleticism, he's not a super explosive athlete in really any way. In terms of moving his feet on the perimeter, okay, certainly not great. Explosiveness around the rim, okay, certainly not great. Mostly a below the rim finisher in the half court, but he does do a great job of initiating contact, a really good job of finding angles to finish through contact. Even after getting fouls, he is able to maintain that and go through it and put up a good shot. And he just plays at a pace, and in terms of changing direction with both his body and his dribble, really good body control, that he is able to generate shots. And he's one of those players where I look at, and you put him in NBA spacing, and I think he can get even better.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot, like in terms of projectable offensive games, I think he is certainly among the people that we were talking about. He has the fewest question marks out of that group.
And the one thing, is start off with the poise that he plays with on the floor. As a young player like this, leading a university, an organization like this with Rutgers, with so much, where we talk about players coming in, can they live up to the hype? And he's coming and live up to the hype, where we'll get to the other prospect. But yes, they were both discussed, but the other one was discussed a little bit more than Harper. And in this case, with what he has been able to do, with that poise, with that size, with those numbers that he's putting up there. And you talk about college basketball, oftentimes we'll see players from other schools that will average 25 to 30 points. And it's on those smaller programs. They're getting all these shots. Not another lottery pick right next to him, a top 3 pick, top 5 pick potentially on his team. And for him to do this, for him to play this way and not change. And when we speak about players that like to play under control, like let's look at Jared McCain. We had our questions about him coming into the season after the draft because of how much they're going to make him change how he is a little bit. Not the team, talking about the opposition of forcing him to do some other things that he doesn't want to. Get him out of himself. Get him out of his comfort zone. That's not the case with Dylan Harper right now. And when he gets to the NBA, I'd imagine that won't change all that much either because the guy's just pro-ready with what he does, and all of that stuff just translates. The athleticism, he'll make up for it with the other things, the intangibles that he does out there on the floor, the shooting, the body control around the rim, taking those mid-range shots as well, and knocking down at a better clip from behind the three-point line. So if he's running the team at that size, you mentioned Cade Cunningham, you start to
cross-racial.
Cross-racial. Yes, Gene, we got to go cross-racial on it. Where I looked at him and I said, damn, he kind of looks like, without the explosiveness at the rim, because Goran Dragic could get to the rim and finish a little bit more, but he was really, really under control once he really started to get to it, once he came from overseas and started playing here in the NBA. It's like, damn, this guy, he kind of looks like that Goran Dragic type of, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm going to get some in and outs, the splitting of it, manipulating the defense the way that he does. And if you want to stay on the same side, you go look at Malcolm Brogdon as the ACC Player of the Year candidate at Virginia, of how good he was and how under control that guy was at Virginia, and then to come in and lead Milwaukee, be the Rookie of the Year.
And notably, Malcolm Brogdon was a fourth-year senior, right? The fact that this guy, I think, to your point, Devon,
to the comparison,
to have the poise and the control of the game that he does as a teenager, as a freshman, and you can compare him to what guys looked like coming out of school when they're upperclassmen, when they're seniors. That's what, because a lot of people hear the terms like pro ready or like this guy's more ready. Mm-hmm. And that can be used as a negative, right? Teams are overdrafting someone who can play right now, but maybe you're not getting the upside. The thing with him is he's so poised at such a young age and has such a great understanding of who he is. Like, they haven't had the toughest schedule, but you're talking about a kid who, in a run where they're playing good teams, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas A&M, Ohio State, he's scoring 36 points against Notre Dame. He's scoring 37 points against a top 10 ranked Alabama team.
In college,
because
you don't get those numbers in college.
You absolutely do not. So his ability, like, I think the Dragic comparison where you would see that is the mixing speeds, right? We talk about it with Maxey, the ability to decelerate and then explode out of a move and just do the subtle things like that, where yes, he's not a top end explosive athlete, but the changing of pace, like one thing you pay attention to with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is exactly that, right? Accelerating, decelerating, using those long Euro steps and dribble moves and working around the fact that, no, you're not going to go up and punch one on somebody all the time, but you can still create separation in different ways. I see that often from him. And I think, as Derek hammered, when you put that guy in NBA spacing, like he might look much, much better. And he already looks very good.
You put him in that type of spacing with these guys, since we talk about the Sixers, put them with these guys, that's a lot of space for him to work with in the NBA, and of course on the side with the Philadelphia 76ers. Good start there with the first two prospects that we discussed. Let's get to 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, maybe 7. We'll see how far we can go as we hang out on Wednesday. Sixers play on Friday against the Hornets. Saturday on the road in Cleveland. We'll talk about the NBA Cup a little bit later, and these prospects, practice notes, updates as well, right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. And look, I'll even stick with the holiday theme. You have your loved ones that you talk about, and you have to have some difficult conversations like, hey, Dad, your hair starting to go a little bit. I've had those conversations with my daughters, and they're honest with me. So we talk about these things. And look, sometimes you have to do certain things. And look, if you're in having those difficult type of conversations, maybe you went in with the hair and had to jokingly talk about it before. You don't have to go to Turkey. You just go to GLAT, Morgenstern Center, as they have combined forces to put together this great, great place for orbital and facial plastic surgery. Recently welcoming, of course, Morgenstern welcoming the GLAT group to the practice. And what you get from them is just great overall conversation about how to move forward with what you want to do and how you want to look overall. Under the direction of renowned plastic surgeon Dr. Ken Morgenstern, and Dr. GLAT and Morgenstern are longtime friends, remarkable bond that they have shared. And since acquiring and partnering up with GLAT, things have still gone on without missing a beat overall. They have the same peerless approach to the care, expert team, same unmatched GLAT system, state-of-the-art location, and the same stellar results overall. So what are the results that we're talking about? Well, the hair restoration is a great thing, a great start of what they do. Laser light therapy, non-invasive TED treatments, vitamin supplementation as well. topical, oral medications, PRP, and stem cell restoration, hair restoration surgery. Each patient will receive a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment. So if you want to hook up your dad or your brother or somebody you're having that difficult discussions overall, again, like Boots said, hey, Dad, let me help you and set you up with Dr. Morgenstern here to get you a consultation, because we've had this conversation already, right, Dad? Glad hair isn't just about restoration. It's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments really do dramatically change lives. And bald is now optional. It is a choice. But if you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself by keeping your hair, Glad Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit gladhairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started.
And guys, once you have your hair back, you want tickets. You want to go out on the town. You want to go see what you're doing around the holidays or maybe later after the holidays. Game Time is the app, is the place that has your back. Game Time helps you celebrate being together, right? Buying tickets, getting them as a gift on Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever you're getting gifts. It's great. It is great to be able to know, hey, we have this event in the future we're going to. And it's also great knowing you got the best possible deal on those tickets when you bought them or when the person who got them for you bought them. We love some affordability around here. Game Time's lowest price guarantee means if you can find a better deal elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You see the all-in pricing the second you get on the app, right? Toggle that feature. You don't have to go through 15 steps to go to the checkout phase. You can see right away, here's what it costs. 4 tickets, 2 tickets, 1 ticket, whatever it is. And on top of that, the panoramic seat views that we talk up all the time around here. Go into the app, click on the ticket and the seats that you want, and you can see exactly what it looks like. I could see what it looked like when I'm going to see Kendrick Lamar and SZA in the spring at the Lincoln Financial Field. Pretty excited about that one, assuming the Sixers don't somehow ruin it and have to work at that point. But whatever event it is, sports, comedy, music, theater, and much more, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Devon?
Game time. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. Kyle, let's get to the next guy. Got to get some tickets to go up to Rutgers to see Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Big time prospect coming in with Dylan Harper. Just under 18 points. He missed 2 games, 9 games in his books, 7 rebounds, 35% from beyond the three-point line. And yes, a whopping 0.6 assists per game in those 9.
Yeah.
And I know that's a sticking point, of course.
Oh, it's a sticking point, all right.
Have at it, Kyle. You get the start on Ace Bailey.
Listen, I'll start with the negative so I can work my way to the positive. I normally do the other way. He has 5 assists in 9 games. That is borderline impossible as a
especially for how much he has the ball in his hands.
For a high usage college player. He's using 28% of their possessions and has 5 assists in 9 games. That is horrendous. You can blame the structure. You can blame the coaching staff. You can blame however they play. End of the day, we're talking about feel, right? Cooper Flagg has good feel. Yep. Dylan Harper, good feel. Ace Bailey, non-existent feel as far as we can tell. So that is a major, major, major red flag for a guy who's got pretty significant physical talent, who in theory, he's like a true 6'10", right? Even just hitting a few over the top of the defense passes for assists, you should be able to get 1 a game. I'm not saying that he, as a play finisher, needs to be LeBron James point forward type, but I would like to see some form of passing and playmaking. So that is my biggest hang up with him, and that is everybody's biggest hang up with him. The other thing after that is, can he generate advantages as often as he should be able to? His handle is not as good as it needs to be. And one thing that I've paid more attention to as I watch these guys over the last, let's say 5-6 years or so, is flexibility is a word that gets used a lot. he is a very stiff, upright player.
Yes,
and
he
the comparison that you would make in that sense would be Jabari Smith, right? He's the negative end of that, where people were enamored with the size and shot making when he was at Auburn, but the inability to consistently get by guys and get to the rim was a problem. He would settle for lots of mid-range jumpers. Now, the high end of that sort of player, and it's another comp he's gotten, is Michael Porter Jr.
Well, I was going to say even higher end than that, Brandon Miller, who we just saw a little.
Yes, and Brandon Miller's been a very good young player over his first season and a quarter, we would say. Michael Porter Jr. would be another good outcome for him as a guy who's almost purely a shot maker, going to be a good catch and shoot guy, very good mid-range player. And that's the thing, right? When you watch Ace Bailey play, you can see why he's been a highly coveted prospect. And I've talked to NBA people that are like, I would still take him top 3 and not really think about it because they believe in the shot making above all else. And he hits shots that should not be possible to make. It's like falling sideways, one leg over an outstretched defender, cash. And like that is the sort of thing that is very difficult to teach. And when you're 6'10", and you can make shots from all over the floor, when you're off balance and can make shots, when you are balanced, then you can make a ton of threes, and you're 6'10". And I mean, he had a 15 rebound game against Penn State, right? So you can see there are games when he's able to leverage the size, make an impact on the glass, and do different things. That's why he's still in this mix. But if you were saying who I think I've soured on the most relative to, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I watched much Ace Bailey high school tape, but the impression I had from him talking to scouts and reading about him versus what I've seen, I think he has dipped the most for me as far as what I think of him going to the next level.
Boots calls him Ace, I'm getting mine's Bailey.
The thing is, I don't even know if he's really like all that. I don't think it's necessarily being all about him. Like, I don't think he's a bad teammate.
I don't think he's selfish.
I just think he doesn't see it. And he doesn't force, to Kyle's point, I don't think he forces rotations. He doesn't get all the way to the rim as much as you would hope. Part of that is the handles. Part of that is a stiffness, which I think is absolutely true. And part of it is that maybe the burst just isn't quite there, which could be just being held back by the handles. But he doesn't draw defenses like you would want from a guy taking that many shots. So I think it's a combination of, I don't think he's necessarily selfish, but the combination of just not having the court vision and not really forcing the rotations you want in a top ball handler and creator. He is the exact archetype that I struggle with because he has a lot of red flags that I really do not like. Like that I really, really do not like. But what he does well, he might be the best tough shot maker in this draft. That is the skill set that is
he might be the best tough shot maker in the last 3 to 5 drafts, frankly.
That is one of the skill sets that is almost a prerequisite to being a true superstar. That is one of the toughest skill sets to acquire in this sport. So if he figures out the rest of that stuff, or if I'm just wrong in my evaluation, he's the one where you can miss on the most. And we brought up 3 names a little earlier in the Jabari Smith, Michael Porter Jr., Brandon Miller spectrum. Where he ends up fitting in that spectrum will be key. I don't think and we brought it up just because there's similarities in their shot making and their size. I don't think he's going to be Brandon Miller. I don't think he has a feel for the game or, really just the ability to pull up off the dribble like Brandon Miller does. I think that would be a very high-end outcome. I don't believe in that. If I did believe in that, he would be a top 2, top 3 pick and in contention for that number 1 pick. But how much can he make up that ground? Like if Michael Porter Jr. didn't have the back concerns coming out and you could project that kind of career, Porter Jr. would be a top 5 pick.
Yes.
And I think when we start talking about Ace, I would not take him with a top 3 pick right now. But I would struggle to let him fall too much farther than 5 just because, like I said, that archetype is so valuable. It's so tough to acquire. And somebody with his skill level and shot-making abilities just don't grow on trees, and they're really tough to teach. So if you can believe in yourself to just get him a little bit from where he is in some of those peripheral skills to where he needs to be, I would understand using a top 5 pick on him.
Yeah.
Because I've seen, there's people all across the board. There are still people arguing 100%. For him at number 2. There are people arguing he shouldn't be a top 10 pick. I would not let him fall too much far below 5 just because of the upside.
I think he is the risk tolerance guy, right? That he's going to show exactly how big of a swing NBA executives are willing to take. And I do look, I think we say all this, and I laid out a ton of negatives to open. And I still think right now he's pretty firmly a top 5 guy. And I think at the end of the day, that's where he's going to end up in this draft.
And we're still going to take the ride to Rutgers to watch both he and Harper. And, let's move to the next one. Let's go to BYU, folks. Brian Knight brought him up. It's one of the guys that put these two fellas here wanted to talk about. And Egor Demin. I'm just going Demi since we had the conversation.
So, yeah, we watched a video that he filmed for BYU where he pronounced his name. Keep that up for a while. The Egor was clear. But when he said his last name,
thank you.
It's Demin or Demin, and it's somewhere in between that. And I was like, it's the Russian accent is what's throwing it off. I'm trying to do the hoagie mouth version of a Russian player saying his Russian name. So we're just going with Egor because he was very clear on his first name. We'll clear up the last name, the exact pronunciation later.
Kyle, this guy is pretty good, man. He's pretty good.
So again, back to feel. And I think so. One of the reasons I think I'm dinging Ace so much is that there are a lot of high feel guys at the top of this class. And I think the league has moved more and more toward those types of players. Egor coming into the college season was looked at as like a potential lottery guy, but not necessarily a top 5 guy. And then he came in just kicking everybody's ass to start this season. Now, it is worth noting, level of competition has been relatively low so far. And I think Egor's stock will either solidify in the range we're talking about, right? Top 5, top 8. If he holds up his play in the Big 12, that's going to say a whole hell of a lot about his ability to play against, higher level athletes and generate advantages and all that. The big thing that we've seen from him that scouts said was not really there overseas is the shot. He's making 38.5% of his threes, taking about 5 a game. Now, the free throw numbers are a little spooky. He's only shooting 68% from the line. He's only getting there 3 times a game. But if the shot is there, I really love him as a playmaker. He's 6'9", has great vision, and a lot of times we get into I think there's a difference between being an effective playmaker and being a good passer. I think they're distinct categories. I think he's both.
Yes.
Because I think if you look at the placement on his passes, I think if you look at the velocity on his passes, you watch BYU play and he's making a skip pass to the corner. It is on time, on target, and it's like an immediate in the guy's shooting pocket, go up and take the shot. Or he's in a pick and roll and he's got a guy going to the rim. He will thread the bounce pass in traffic up into the guy's hands. And then that's minimal work for the big to do to go up, dunk it, lay up, get fouled, whatever it is. That's a skill and an ability that not everybody has. Very few guys have at that size. And then you add on connective passing, right? Where he'll get the ball off the ball, catch it around the elbow and make like quick whip passes, right? Like we saw somebody like DeAnthony Melton do things like that for the Sixers. There are a lot of guys who that's a part of their skill as a secondary playmaker. So a lot of really good passing indicators for me. And he's the sort of guy that I think on offense can fit with just about anybody. Now, we're going to have to figure out how does this guy project on the defensive end of the floor is the big question. And that is probably more than the offense. That's what I want to see in, extended Big 12 play and potentially the NCAA tournament is what is this guy's foot speed and space? Who can he guard? How switchable is he? All that. But I'd love the game intelligence I see from him. Frankly, he's using his physical tools pretty well so far. 1.6 steals a game, almost a full block a game. Like those are good numbers for a guy who is a guard, albeit a very big guard. So he took me by surprise in the early games I watched him. The key is going to be, does he sustain the shooting? And if he doesn't sustain the shooting, how does that impact him as a driver and a pick and roll playmaker?
I'm sorry, what was the comp? I missed it.
I don't really have a comp for him at this point.
What about you? No?
I don't know if I have a great comp for him.
Franz Wagner type?
Oh, he's a better passer.
He's a much better passer.
I just mean because of all of it that's there, and then you add the passing to it with the size.
No, he is. I think he is a legitimately, and this is kind of crazy because he's 6'9". He is a great passer. And I think Kyle's right. He sees all the passes. He has a creativity to make the passes, and his passes are on point, on target, and on time. And that combination is very tough to find, especially when you factor in that he's shooting relatively well on the perimeter. And Kyle mentioned it was one of the concerns when he was playing in the ACB. Very young playing in the ACB, but playing in the ACB, his shot was all up and down. The free throw percentage was only in kind of like the low 70s. 3-point percentage was low 30s. It was a tough projection to make. But now that he's making shots at that size, that passing is incredibly unique and valuable. I do worry a little bit, is he going to force enough rotations to really be that primary initiator or really make the most of the, that tool set? I almost don't want to make this comparison now because there's so many off-court implications of it, but sort of like Josh Giddey, the players who would overrate or people who would overrate Giddey, he has real creativity as a passer, but he doesn't force a double team and he doesn't make enough perimeter shots to make the most of it. Question here, I think Egor is going to shoot from the perimeter. I do buy into that. Is he going to be able to force enough rotations to be able to really make the most of it? That's one question. And then obviously the defense is a question as well.
Yeah.
And to Kyle's point, BYU is, there a lot of times at this time of year, I don't even like to really make a big board because there's so much noise in the competition. And you combine the low sample with the competition and you can get anchored to evaluations a little too early. And I think this is one of these top 5 that we're talking about. Egor, that might apply to more just because their out-of-conference schedule is kind of,
Yeah, and frankly, his numbers, as they've started to play tougher teams, have gone down, right? They opened the season with, I'm just reading them right in order, Central Arkansas, UC Riverside, Queens, North Carolina.
Nice, Queens.
Idaho.
Nice. I didn't even know that existed.
Mississippi Valley State. That's his start to the year. Now, he had a decent game against Ole Miss. That was one of their first tough games. Not that great of a game, at least as a scorer, against NC State. And another tough game as a scorer against Providence in their most recent game. So as the schedule has tightened up, he has looked worse. That is something to monitor big time.
I had something for you guys before the TV side blanks out. Chris is going to drop it off for us here. Since it's early.
Oh, wow.
And it's like our last one. Thank you, Chris.
So you're showing us up because neither Kyle nor I brought any
We still
gifts
have a
ourselves.
week. I wanted to get mine because we have so many broken up days overall.
Oh, my. Look, Santa Givens over here.
So even when we yell at each other and Kyle can be wrong
if
about
there's a Die Hard shirt in there, I'm walking off the set.
You know what I mean? And last year, I came back in December and I took a lot of crap. All in good fun because we're family about my 3-month
I wasn't kidding about that.
Exodus. You're right, because you did actually make like graphics for it and all kinds of stuff. I just wanted to say that I am happy to be here.
You can take a 3-month vacation and not hear any shit for it? Come on now.
And how much I've enjoyed working with you guys, and happy holidays. And you know how much as much as we've talked.
What a guy, man.
How much I love
appreciate
you guys,
that, sir.
And I love Bree, and of course. So I wanted to make sure that before the TV side went away.
Are we supposed to look at them now, or is this off camera?
No.
I'm asking if we're supposed to. If it's something that the
it's absolutely fine.
Okay,
it's absolutely fine. I just wanted to make sure.
I'll save it for a private moment then.
Okay,
I'll see.
So I wanted to make sure that I gave you guys and Gal and Bree, of course, the gifts and happy
thank you,
holidays
Devon.
to you.
I'm very touched.
Yes. To be fair, considering you're basically like our candy correspondent, like you bring us gifts pretty much every show.
This is true. Devon always provides.
We love candy. Martian's like, open it. Sean Wayne's DVDs. Yes, darkness. Yes. Yes. How about this? Take the top part. You can do the top part.
Top part?
Top part. Because of what you just said. Just because of what you just said about that piece. And
oh, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Some sweets,
I
baby.
take care of my folks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were having this conversation. Kyle,
the bunt cakes,
you
baby.
haven't had it, right?
I have not had it.
So we had to
put that on display.
Yeah.
Right. Can we see that? Oh, yeah.
The goods here.
Oh, the other one is wrapped up.
Yeah.
That's wrapped up. So we'll leave the
Yeah.
Devon bringing some sweets.
I should have brought you a fork because I knew you would have just devoured that right now. Exactly. So there you go. But happy holidays to you guys, and you know how much I love being here with you guys.
We do still have a week.
We do have a week, but
I gotta go to the mall now.
We're off tomorrow. Just for schedule update, we're off tomorrow. Friday is the Reading Terminal.
Yep.
And Derek and Kyle will be there. Rich and I will have the pre and post before the Cleveland Cavaliers game. They'll be at the game, the Hornets game, sorry. They'll be at the game, but we will be together on Saturday for the pre and post. But just because of everybody's schedule, it's the
busier
weekend.
on those,
it's the weekend. Just wanted to make sure we did that. So we'll all be here. Bree will be here. Chris, thank you. Appreciate it for dropping those off. We do have more. Jay said, yo, those cakes are like crack. So yes, they are. Yes, they are. But one more, maybe two we'll get to as far as our prospects. Let's get to VJ here, Bree, and talk about VJ Edgecombe, the freshman from Baylor, super athletic.
Nuclear.
I mean, he would join the league and be one of the 3 to 5 most athletic guys in the league instantly.
And the problem is you've seen guys, Stanley Johnson, that have come in to be a top 5. Not as a comparison of what you just said. An athletic guy that comes in with these high bar of, we can fix him. We can correct whatever problem is.
I was like, man, Zaire Smith once looked like a nuclear athlete.
Yeah. But this is what you get, right, Derek? A super athletic guy. And the questions, though, then become, what else can he do and how can that translate to the NBA to fix those problems on the NBA level?
Yeah. Well, I think starting off, he plays hard. And when you have that kind of athleticism and you play hard, there is a base to work with. I think certainly he can leverage at driving, getting to the rim, getting to the foul line. He doesn't have, I'm trying to look it up real quickly. He doesn't seem like he has a great wingspan, so that might limit his defensive versatility a little bit. It hasn't limited his playmaking in college. He's averaging like 2.5 steals per game. But you do wonder at some point, is he going to be able to defend the 2s, the 3s, the 4s with I just pulled up a 6'6" wingspan, which is not great. Like Harper, we talked about, had a 6'10" wingspan at a similar size. So that might give you some pause. But I mean, the shot is the very obvious concern there. I don't know if I can say that I've watched enough to really know whether or not I have a high degree of confidence that it is going to eventually translate. But that is where you start off with the concerns, I think.
Yeah. And look, we can be honest, not a good shooter, has not shown a whole lot offensively quite yet. I do think one of his problems is he's on a team with upperclassmen who are going to handle the ball quite a bit. So he's not able to go through a lot of the stuff you would want a top 10 pick prospect to go through as a lead ball handler. He is absolute anarchy on defense, creates total chaos for opponents. I want you guys at some point, I'm not saying to scout him through highlights, pull up some defensive highlights from this starting point of the season, preseason. He looks like a video game happening on the way he moves, the way he jumps, and what he does not look like it should be physically possible. There are times when he's jumping and it looks like he should have plateaued and started falling, and he just continues going up and grabs the ball and dunks on somebody or comes up with a chase down block. You can't teach how hard he plays. And when you take how hard he plays and combine that with his athleticism, you have the ingredients for a guy who can be an absolute game changer on the defensive end of the floor. The big question is just, what can he be on offense? He would have to slide into a role where he's mostly a cutter, offensive rebounder, doing that stuff right away as an off-ball player as you bring him along. And maybe that works out okay here, right? Where they don't necessarily need high-volume creators. They need role players. They need defenders. They need switchable players. The wingspan and the concerns that you would have about how that manifests for who you guard and what your assignments are, that's a real thing. But I think he is going to be an awesome defender. I mean, 2.4 steals a game, 1.3 blocks a game as a guy with a 6'6" wingspan is absolutely out of control.
And before I give my quick thoughts, because I have a comparison. We're going to get a comparison for the very reason that you're talking about with the athletic guys who there are questions about the other parts of their skill set overall. We do want to say, since we did discuss the TV side of things, that if you are watching on television, we appreciate you doing so. But if you want to continue to watch the show, maybe get in an extra prospect, talk about Embiid and McCain and their update from practice today with the practice notes from the fellas, and also a little bit of NBA Cup conversation, you do so at allphly.com for more of the show. So once again, we appreciate everybody on the TV side We've been getting some really cool stuff done on the television side, and we thank everybody for hanging out with us. All right, so that made me think immediately about the last year's draft with the 2 drafts ago with Amen Thompson and Asura Thompson.
Yeah,
where you discuss can they shoot? Can they do all these other things? The athleticism is freakish. They can defend like no other. And we're seeing it now finally with both of them from Detroit and Houston, especially with Amen and how, what do they call them? The terror
twins with Tyrese.
Yeah. So with them, that you also have to wind up in the right spot. It's about situational of where you land and how much they can help develop you and put you in the right spot to succeed. And then the other stuff will eventually catch up. But with today's NBA, if you do enough to impact the game, the role is there for you, for someone like Edgecombe. And as we talk about with the Thompson twins. So very curious to see what he does and he's in a big time conference. So they're going to play some games. They got some real stiff competition to see how he holds up against those others as well.
And I like that you brought up the Thompson twins because Amen, I think the separator there is he can create, right? Like, and he's a pretty good passer. The problem for him is just the shot. He has an ability to impact the game offensively in certain ways as a driver, slasher, and playmaker for others. And I'm not so sure that that's there for Edgecombe yet, right? Like I need to see something, a defined, I can do this regularly skill in order to believe in him as one of these top level guys. I just am so enamored with the defensive stuff that it'll be hard for me to lose track of him entirely. But I think there are some very real concerns about him as a creator, and that when you are in the top echelons of the draft, that's ultimately what makes or breaks these prospects. It's you can be a high level elite defender, but if you're not doing something, whether it's for yourself or creating for others, there's a hard cap on how good you can be.
Man, the way they pumped up Stanley Johnson, I was like, the guy can play, but I don't know. And then he was just all over
that whole
league.
Draft, man. That draft was a landmine.
Yeah, that was a crazy one. Do we have one more, Kyle? We don't have a graphic for it. But
so I have one more. And you guys are going to have to bear with me. He's from Lithuania. But Jakucionis, who's their lead guard for Illinois, we'll see where the shooting settles. Because right now, he's a 6'6" guard shooting 42% from three as the lead playmaker for a Big Ten school. And I think you can see a high-level point guard in there. Mm-hmm. The question will be, where does the shot settle? Because similar to Harper, I don't believe in the 42% number. I think he's taking so many tough step backs with guys in his face. It's going to even out at some point. And I think when you see him drive, you see the flashes as a driver and a playmaker off of his drives. But there are still some times now where because he can't create a ton of separation because he's not like the highest end athlete, he can get stuck in the mid-range and then he's just kind of deer in the headlights. What do I do with it? Where I do like his feel is when he gets blitzed and he gets trapped high, he's very good at making reads out of that spot, whether that's finding the big on the short roll. Illinois, I can't remember the name of their one big, but he's more of a pick and pop big. And if you send 2 on the ball at Jakucionis, he's going to find that guy, and that's an open 3 from the trail spot. That's something you can see immediately with like Joel Embiid, him pick and popping, even someone like Yabusele is a small ball guy. He will hit that play over and over and over. He's good at making those passes through traffic. He's a little bit of a risky playmaker right now. His turnovers are the highest of the lead guard types, but I think his touch as a passer is good. He's good on the lofted entries. He can make the tough ones in traffic. He's good against blitzes and traps, which I think is something that tends to come later for a lot of these guys. Anybody who's putting up 16, 6, and 6, shooting 42% from 3 at a high major, that's worth paying attention to. So I have my eye on him. He's played his way up a lot of boards early in the season. We're going to see where he ends up. So
I think Vicini had him at like 5. Vicini's really high on him. And Sam's a guy that I really respect and I've gotten to know over the years. His Jumper has, I think, been on a steady improvement, especially his previous 2 years at Barcelona. Like he went from low 30s to 32 to 36 to now 42. And to Kyle's point, 42 might be too high, but I think the trajectory has been pretty clear. And the free throws were on a similar pathway. Like
I think he's like a
high 80s.
84% or something from the line.
Yeah, and the previous 2 years at Barcelona, again, he was high 80s. So I think there's reason to be optimistic. I can't say I have sat here and watched all of his games so far, so I want to sit down and watch a shot a lot more. But if that is true, then certainly with the size and the passing instincts and the playmaking and, some of the risk taking can be good. Like I like a point guard who will take an occasional risk every now and then if it leads to high value shots for his teammates. Certainly an intriguing prospect.
All right. Fellas, we need a little update from practice today from Joel Embiid to Jared McCain, what head coach Nick Nurse had to say. Next game is on Friday. Neither will be available, but another chance again to get a win, pick up a W, take advantage of the schedule for what it is right now, and have Paul George and Tyrese Maxey on the floor once again. So some things there that stood out from the Embiid McCain piece from today.
Yeah, I mean, so Embiid was taking jumpers. He didn't have any kind of a mask on. His face looked like it was still intact. Obviously, he was only shooting jumpers, so who knows what will happen when he actually goes through contact portions of practice and games. But he was on the court taking some jumpers. In terms of McCain, the Sixers sent out a press release last night saying that he had surgery to repair the torn meniscus. Sometimes the word repair will just be used as like they fixed an injury.
Yeah.
So you don't want to read too much into it. So I went and I asked around today, and he did get the repair on a meniscus, not the removal, which again, we have talked about time and time again, in part because these players keep getting injured. But the repair basically means it's a much longer recovery timeline, but they don't actually remove any of the meniscus. So it has much better long-term. The prognosis is a lot better long-term. So the odds of him playing this year are seemingly low. Not every recovery timeline is the same. Who knows? Things could happen. But with the repair, it is going to be a longer timeline, a significantly longer timeline, because sometimes with the removal, it can just be like 4 to 8 weeks, and you can be back on the court. But it should be better for his long-term health.
It's a great update.
There you go.
Honestly, and again, a lot of times you don't actually have a choice on the procedure. Kyle's been hammering this home ever since Joel last year. It really depends on where the injury is, the severity of the injury, the blood flow in the area. But if you did have an option, and I think a lot of people look at it like, oh no, like if he misses 4, 5, 6 months, that's not great. But for someone so young, the fact that they're able to repair it, I think is really good news, even if it does cause them to miss either most of or all of the season.
Why did Martian say Joel needs an airbag in his jersey?
And again, our version of good news this year is that our rookie, who is likely going to win Rookie of the Year, is out for the season or might be out for the season. That is our version of good news, and that shows how down in the dumps we are.
And it's because we're hoping for the best for Jared over the long term of his career, right? We can be not optimistic about the season, but we can say, hey, they're not tanking and they're going to focus on trying to win as many games as possible. What you don't want that to turn into is people making irresponsible decisions about long-term health decisions. So it's good. I mean, it's great that they were able to repair it because, as Derek said, that's not possible in a lot of instances because of how blood flow in the knee works. And it's great that they decided to do that and are giving Jared, the best chance that he can have to have the long-term career that he and the team want. So obviously, best wishes to Jared. Hopefully he has a full recovery, and whether he comes back earlier than expected or comes back next season, then we're all hoping for the best for him.
Bree, we have Super Chat that I think I saw a little bit earlier from Misremembered 72. Christmas movie, girl with the dragon tattoo reuniting with a loved one during the holiday. Eyes wide shut. Reuniting with your wife in a specific way.
0 for 2, misremembered. But this illustrates the point I was trying to make yesterday in our heated debate. Is like, if the theme of the movie is not Christmas, it ain't a Christmas movie.
All right, let's get to any NBA Cup thoughts from the Milwaukee Bucks winning. Doc Rivers adding to his resume, as you said in our group chat last night, adding to the resume, and we're not going to hear the end of it.
Should we print out a Doc Rivers apology form for anybody to sign?
We will have a Doc Rivers victory tour.
There you go. There's your update on the NBA Cup from last night. I am surprised that the OKC didn't win, but you got to make shots. And they did not.
It's one game.
I would say this. I think the NBA Cup needs to be reimagined based on how it's been presented the first 2 years. I suggested in the Discord today, here's how I would run the NBA Cup. You seed it 1 through 30 based on previous year's standings. You get to, starting with the number 1 overall seed, you get to pick your matchup until there are no more matchups. Single elimination tournament, top seed remaining in the final, host the final. That's all it is. And you do it over a longer period of the season.
On your home floor, all that stuff. You don't have to, right.
I think the final should not be in December when people are not really caring about basketball relative to, the NFL and college football and other things. Anyway, you put it in the spring. It's like let's say a little teaser of playoff basketball as teams are rounding into form. Even if I would even go this far. I would kill the All-Star game entirely. And on All-Star weekend, I would play the NBA Cup final. If you're going to do a neutral site, I'd rather do that than this nonsense 4 teams and rising stars tournament. I'd rather make that the centerpiece of All-Star weekend.
At least let me keep the dunk contest and the 3-point contest.
Yeah, well, that's what you can do that, right? All-Star Saturday, you leave completely intact. Throw out the All-Star game. You can honor everybody before the game. Like, have everybody come out.
They can still be All-Stars. You just don't play the game.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think one of the things that I came away with watching that game was how ridiculous it was to expect the fan bases from OKC and Milwaukee. Their teams won their game on Saturday, and then it's like, oh, Tuesday in Las Vegas. What are you going to spend? Like, I don't know, $600 a flight per person to get there, whatever it's going to cost to go to Vegas, the hotel for the night. I would ideally rather have it separate on its own, but on somebody's home floor, so you get a real playoff type environment.
Do they get, when is their break? Because if everyone else gets a break, they're going to want to break also.
There's not a perfect way to do it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think putting it at a neutral site when there's like 2 days of lead into it is the way to do it. It has to be, if not at the end of the season, somewhere closer to the end of the season.
All right, folks, let's get to it. World famous roll call.
Oh, boy.
Off on Thursday, folks. Don't forget, we'll be back on Friday during the day and pre and post as well.
And by the way, if you guys are around Friday daytime, we'll be hanging out at the Reading Terminal Market. Would love to see some of you. Say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, do all that. I'd love to see all of you. Make your way down there. But I know not all of you live in the city or near the city. Come down to Reading Terminal, have a nice lunch there, stop by, say hello. We'll shake hands, we'll chop it up, whatever. Would love to see some of you there because we love seeing you at any of our events
all the time.
Coming out.
All the time.
Love seeing you at games, events, whatever it might be. Hope to see you Friday at the Reading Terminal Market. Love seeing you here today, regardless. Thank you to my girl Winona.
What up, Nona?
To Eugene Ross, to Aaron, to Bootzilla, to Money Mar, to Darkness.
Turn the lights down.
To Martian Lynch 33, to DJ, a.k.a. Mr. Sandman.
Bring me a drink. It is right. It's the time, too.
Brian Knight. Keith B.
We need a song, man.
We got Jaden. Jaden's on break. He's hanging out with us.
Chatting away. Take the break.
INS. SB Cole. K Red. Jess with the Purple Heart.
Hey, Jess.
I'm running out of breath today. I got to get in some better shape over this holiday break. Jay. Jay's hanging out. Jay said he's going to bring me my cigar finally at Reading Terminal after we talked about smoking cigars together at some point. I don't think that's approved in Reading Terminal. Maybe we step outside for a little bit. Jay.
Light it up.
Mom's grandchildren.
Hey, Mom.
What up to Mom? PHLY. Teacher got game.
Teacher got game, do you?
Also checking in. Thank you to each and every one of you. Oh, our guy Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Popping in at the end. Thanks to everybody, even if I didn't get to you. And even if you weren't in the chat, maybe you're just lurking. We respect and love you people too.
What up, Martian?
Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. Hit the thumbs up button to help us in the algorithm, to say thank you to super producer Bree, but thank also you, to say thank you to Christmas man himself, Christmas Santa Claus of PHLY.
I'm not the Grinch today.
Devon Gibbons
To be
bringing
honest,
gifts.
compared to us two, you're never the Grinch.
Yeah, if anything, I'm the Grinch or Derek. We can battle it out, but one of us is the Grinch. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back Friday. We'll see you then. Take care. Happy holidays.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.